I sat in the corner of the kitchen, the warm yellow light from the pendant lamp casting a soft glow. Night had fallen, but I remained focused on my laptop screen, fingers gently tapping the keyboard. Outside the window, the city sparkled with lights, but inside, I felt only emptiness. It was as if our three-bedroom suburban home, once a cozy haven, had become nothing more than cold walls and unsettling silence. My husband Ryan walked into the kitchen with his familiar half-smile. "Working late again?" His voice was sweet, but his eyes couldn't hide the restlessness. I nodded slightly, trying to keep my tone steady. "There's a big project this week. I need to finish it early." Ryan poured himself a glass of water, his movements slow, as if trying to stretch out the moment. "You know, work is important, but you also need to relax. I worry about you." I only smiled, a practiced smile I'd perfected over the past few months, just genuine enough to mask all doubts. 6 months ago, I was still a happy woman. We had been married for nearly 8 years, going through life's ups and downs together. I always trusted Ryan, believing in his promises and cherishing the warm hugs he gave me after long work days. But then, little signs started to appear. One evening, while organizing bills, I accidentally found a charge for an expensive dinner at a restaurant I had never been to. I asked Ryan about it and he simply smiled. "I went with a client, the company paid for it." His answer was straightforward, yet it left a heaviness in my heart. As time went on, the signs became clearer. Ryan began coming home late, saying work was getting busier. He often took calls he said were from his boss, but every time I overheard, his voice was different, lower, sweeter. Once, while doing his laundry, a faint unfamiliar perfume on his shirt made me pause. It wasn't the scent I bought for him, nor was it the usual smell of his office. I didn't want to become the suspicious wife, but gradually, all the small details intertwined, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Ryan still smiled, still said he loved me every night, but his kisses grew colder. Once he even forgot our wedding anniversary, something that had never happened before. Instead, he spent the entire evening in his office, claiming he had an online meeting with a client in a different time zone. I sat in the living room, staring at the closed office door, feeling the distance between us widening. Everything continued like a well-rehearsed play. I became the lead actress in my own life, playing the role of the gentle, trusting wife. But deep down, I began to investigate quietly. I checked credit card statements, finding extravagant gifts, romantic dinners, and even hotel bills. Each piece of evidence was like a silent, sharp knife. One afternoon, when Ryan said he had to go on a 2-day business trip, I followed him. I saw him enter a restaurant with a young woman, blonde hair and a radiant smile. They sat close, their eyes exchanging what I no longer received from him. I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel tightly, feeling both pain and bitterness. My suspicions were finally confirmed, yet my heart still resisted the truth. I returned home before he did, acting as if nothing had happened. When he walked through the door, I greeted him with the same familiar smile, still asking about his fabricated business trip. Ryan was a great actor. But he didn't know, I had become just as skilled in this charade. From that moment on, I knew I couldn't live like this anymore. I needed to do something, not just to protect myself, but to reclaim the justice I deserved. Within me, a plan began to form, each piece quietly falling into place. Ryan thought he was in control, but he had no idea I had already started my own game. I sat on the sofa, gently flipping through the new stack of bills I had just received from the mailbox. The afternoon sun filtered through the window, casting long shadows on the polished wooden floor. Outside, the trees swayed gently in the autumn breeze. Everything around me seemed peaceful, but inside, a storm was brewing. My eyes stopped at a receipt with bold letters. Vehicle deposit, a luxury SUV, valued at nearly $250,000. For a moment, my heart seemed to stop. We had never discussed buying a new car, and it was clear this wasn't a gift for me. I took deep breaths, forcing myself to stay calm. My mind raced through possible explanations. Maybe it was a company car, maybe there was a clerical error. But then, a small voice in my head whispered, "If that's the case, why didn't he say anything to me?" That evening, I sat across from Daniel, my husband, in the open kitchen. He was engrossed in his phone, fingers scrolling rapidly across the screen as if the outside world didn't exist. "I just found a receipt for a new car deposit," I started, keeping my voice as even as possible. Daniel looked up. his eyes briefly showing surprise before his familiar smile appeared. "Oh, that's for work. A client wanted to make an impression, so I just helped them with the paperwork." His voice was calm, natural to the point that, if it were before, I might have believed him, but not this time. His eyes avoided mine and his hands rested on the table with his fingers unconsciously tapping on the glass surface. Those small details did not escape my notice. After dinner, when Daniel went into his office, I remained in the kitchen, clutching my phone tightly. I opened the banking app, checking our joint savings account. My eyes widened as I saw the balance drop significantly. There were numerous withdrawals and transfers, most of which were to places I had never heard of. Large amounts of money flowed into high-end fashion stores, luxury restaurants, and, of course, the car dealership. I tried to piece everything together. Daniel not only bought a car but also used our joint money to cover expenses that clearly had nothing to do with our family. My heart tightened when I realized that all my previous suspicions were not just my imagination. In the following weeks, I began quietly investigating. I went through every receipt, every bank transaction, and researched the places where Daniel had spent money. I even called the car dealership under the guise of needing to verify purchase information. The car was reserved by Daniel Mitchell for Ms. Jenna Hayes. The voice of the dealership employee echoed through the phone, each word like a sharp needle piercing my heart. Jenna Hayes. That name had never come up in any of Daniel's stories. I looked up her information on social media, and it didn't take long to connect the dots. Jenna was a young, beautiful woman who often posted pictures of her lavish lifestyle. Expensive gifts, luxurious dinners, and trips to places that Daniel and I had never been to together. I sat there, my phone screen glowing brightly in the dark, each of Jenna's photos playing out like a slow-motion film before my eyes. Daniel hadn't only deceived me emotionally but also financially. He had turned me into a stranger in my own marriage. I knew I needed to take action, but instead of rushing to confront Daniel immediately, I decided to wait. I needed time to prepare, to ensure that when the truth was revealed, I would be the one in control. I wouldn't let Daniel see my hurt. At least, not yet. I sat in the corner of my small home office, the glow from my laptop screen reflecting off my tired face. Outside, the night had long fallen, and the street lights twinkled in the quiet darkness. The ticking of the wall clock was like a countdown to the plan I was quietly crafting. Since discovering the truth about Daniel and Jenna, I knew I couldn't just sit back and endure, but instead of getting angry or confronting him, I chose a different approach. One that Daniel would never see coming. I started by making a list of all the evidence I had collected: the car deposit receipt, suspicious transactions in our joint savings account, and even the photos Jenna posted on social media with items I knew Daniel had bought. Each document, each image, was carefully stored in a special folder, encrypted with a password only I knew. The next step was contacting the bank. I reported that our joint account had transactions that were not authorized by me. The bank representative's voice initially held some doubt, but when I provided specific evidence, they immediately launched an internal investigation. The account was temporarily frozen, and all subsequent transactions were closely monitored. Alongside that, I filed a complaint with the car dealership. I pretended to be a concerned wife, needing to verify the information about the car my husband had purchased. When I received confirmation that the car was not only under Daniel's name, but also registered to Jenna, I knew I had the key card in my hand. I continued to play the role of the loving wife. Every morning I still prepared breakfast for Daniel, smiled, asked about his work, and even proactively suggested romantic evenings. Daniel seemed unaware of the change in me, or perhaps he was simply too confident in his ability to hide his secrets. Every time Daniel came home late, I didn't ask questions. Every time he took a secretive call, I pretended not to notice. But in reality, I noted every detail, every moment he disappeared from the house. I even quietly installed a tracking app on his phone, ensuring that whenever he lied about a meeting with his boss, I would know exactly where he was. As time passed, I gathered more and more evidence. Receipts from upscale restaurants, spa visits, and particularly the secret transfers to Jenna's account. All of it was carefully documented. I knew I only had one chance, and I needed to make sure that when I played my cards, Daniel would have no way out. I still remember the feeling when I first hit the send button to officially file complaints with the bank and car dealership. Part of me felt scared, but another part felt liberated. I was no longer the weak woman who just waited for the truth to unfold. I was creating my own opportunity, slowly pulling back the curtain to reveal Daniel's true face. Every night while Daniel slept soundly, I sat in the dark, quietly reviewing all the documents. I needed to make sure everything was perfect, with no loopholes for him to escape. Sometimes I looked at him, seeing his peaceful face, completely unaware that a storm was approaching. Once, when he asked me about the frozen bank transactions, I just smiled gently. "It's probably just a system error, honey. Let me call and check for you." Daniel nodded, fully trusting me. I just needed to wait a little longer until everything was ready. Deep down, I knew I wasn't only taking revenge on Daniel for his betrayal. I was finding myself again, reclaiming what belonged to me. And when the right moment came, I wouldn't hesitate to pull back the final curtain, exposing everything to the light. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the emerald green dress Ryan had chosen for tonight. The dress hugged my figure gently, the silky fabric soft against my skin, providing comfort while also exuding an elegant charm. The bedroom lights cast a soft glow, reflecting my image in the mirror, a gentle wife who completely trusted her husband. But only I knew behind that smile was a carefully orchestrated plan. Ryan walked into the room smiling with satisfaction when he saw I was ready. He wore a sleek black suit, his hair neatly styled, looking every bit like a perfect gentleman. "You look beautiful," he said, handing me a bouquet of vibrant red roses. "Tonight is going to be very special." "I'm looking forward to it," I replied, keeping my voice as natural as possible. We walked out of the house hand in hand like a happy couple, but in my mind every step of the plan was already mapped out clearly. Ryan had planned this evening for over a week. He wanted to take me to a fancy restaurant downtown, a place where we had celebrated many important occasions before. I knew his real intention wasn't for me. The luxury car he bought, the one paid for with our shared savings, wasn't a gift for me but for Jenna, his special client. I sat in the car looking out of the window, my hand lightly holding my clutch. Inside the clutch was my phone, with a call already set up. One press of a button and the repossession team and detective would spring into action. I had planned this night, every detail carefully calculated. When Ryan thought he was in control, he was actually just a pawn in the game I had created. The dinner unfolded exactly as I expected. Ryan ordered the most expensive dishes, chose wine from rare vintages, and even arranged for a pianist to play love songs. He spoke of old memories, of our love, but his eyes kept darting to his watch. I knew he was eagerly waiting for the moment to leave, to deliver the surprise gift to Jenna. "You seem a bit nervous," I asked, my voice sweet. "Oh, it's just work," he replied, forcing a smile. "A client needs my help right after dinner." "Really? That's a shame. I thought tonight was just for the two of us," I said, letting a hint of disappointment show. Ryan quickly grabbed my hand. "I'll be back soon. Can you go home first? I promise I'll make it up to you later." I nodded in agreement, gently, as if I completely believed him. But as soon as Ryan left the restaurant, I moved into action. I pressed the call button on my phone, and within a minute I received a confirmation message from the detective. "Everything is ready." I sat back at the table, finishing my dessert, feeling an unusual sense of peace. Ryan thought he was about to create a big surprise for Jenna, but the real surprise was waiting for him. Less than 30 minutes later, I received a message from the repossession team. "The car has been successfully repossessed. Everything went smoothly." I took a sip of tea, smiling softly. In my mind, I imagined the scene of Ryan leading Jenna outside, only to find his luxurious car had vanished without a trace. The satisfaction bubbled inside me, but I kept my face calm and composed. When I returned home, the house was enveloped in silence. I changed out of my evening dress, slipped into a soft nightgown and sat on the sofa, opening my favorite book. I waited, knowing that sooner or later Ryan would come back, and when he did, the facade he had built would finally come crashing down. The door creaked open as the clock neared midnight. Ryan stepped in, his face flushed, his eyes filled with confusion and anger. He slammed the door shut, the keys in his hand clattering sharply against the floor. "You're still up?" he asked, his voice tight. "I was waiting for you," I replied, not looking up from my book. Ryan said nothing more, just stood there, his fists clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. I knew the real game had only just begun. I sat on the sofa, flipping through the pages of my book, but in truth I couldn't read a word. The soft yellow light filled the living room, creating a warm and peaceful ambiance. However, that peace was only on the surface, as a storm was brewing within me. I had prepared myself for this moment, knowing it would come, but when the door opened and Ryan's figure appeared, my heart still beat faster than usual. Ryan walked into the house, his face pale, beads of sweat glistening on his skin. His expensive dress shirt was wrinkled, his tie hanging loosely around his neck. His eyes darted around the room as if searching for something or perhaps looking for a place to hide. He closed the door so hard the frame rattled, and the keys in his hand fell to the floor, making a sharp, cold sound in the quiet space. "You're still up?" His voice was hoarse, as if he had just woken up from a nightmare. "Yeah, I couldn't sleep," I replied, my voice gentle but not hiding the indifference. "You're home late." Ryan didn't respond immediately. He awkwardly took off his shoes, walked over, and sat down on the chair opposite me. His hands trembled as he poured water from the glass pitcher, spilling most of it onto the table. He panted, trying to regain his composure but failing completely. "Is there anything you want to talk to me about?" Ryan asked, his voice a bit rushed. "Nothing special," I smiled, turning another page of my book. "How about you? You seem to have had a long day." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of suspicion and fear. "Just work issues," Ryan mumbled, but his voice lacked the confidence it usually had. I nodded slightly, not probing further into the story. I knew exactly what had happened, but there was no reason to rush. Everything had just begun. In the following days, Ryan became more unusual. He constantly received phone calls, his voice always soft but tense. Whenever I walked into the room, he would immediately hang up or pretend to be checking emails. One morning, when I woke up, I saw him sitting at the dining table, his head buried in his hands, his phone glowing brightly in front of him. "Are you okay?" I gently asked, pulling out a chair to sit across from him. Ryan jolted, looking up, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "It's just a little issue with the bank," he said, forcing a smile. "My account is temporarily frozen. They said there were signs of fraud." "Really? The bank is quite sensitive, huh?" I said, my voice filled with fake surprise. "Do you need me to help with anything?" "No," he replied immediately, then hurriedly adjusted his tone. "I mean, I can handle it. It's probably just a mistake." I nodded, stirring my coffee, letting Ryan sink into his own chaos. I knew that not only the bank but also the car dealership was investigating the purchase transaction under Jenna's name. Every corner Ryan tried to cover up was gradually being exposed. When the final door closed behind Ryan, I sat silently in the armchair in the living room, feeling the unusual quiet envelop the house. No more of his hurried footsteps, no more whispered phone calls or sweet lies. It was just me and a vast space full of potential to start over. I slowly stood up, taking deliberate steps around the house I once considered a home. Cold gray walls, the abstract paintings Ryan liked to hang, the stiff black leather sofa, everything seemed to bear his mark, while I felt lost in my own home. But now, everything was different. I would transform this place into my own, a space that truly reflected who I was. I started by thoroughly cleaning up. The old furniture and decorations Ryan had brought in were packed into cardboard boxes. I didn't want to keep anything that reminded me of the past. Each item removed from the house felt like a heavy layer being lifted from my heart. I hired a repair team to repaint the walls, choosing warm and bright tones. The living room became a soft blue, the bedroom a gentle blush pink, and the home office a crisp white, bringing a sense of peace and tranquility. As the house gradually changed its appearance, I felt as if I was being reborn. I began taking better care of myself. Every morning, I dedicated time to yoga on the terrace, breathing in the fresh air and allowing my body to relax. I planted more greenery around the house, small flower pots by the windows, so that whenever the sunlight poured in, the house seemed to burst with new life. One morning, while sipping coffee on the balcony, I opened my phone and scrolled through my contacts. Familiar names appeared, old friends I had gradually drifted away from during my time with Ryan. I realized I had isolated myself for too long, all in the name of keeping my small family intact. I sent a message to Amanda, my best friend from college, whom I hadn't seen in nearly 2 years. Her reply came quickly. "How about meeting this weekend? I miss you so much." Meeting Amanda was like a door opening to a new world for me. We sat at a small cafe on the corner, sharing countless stories. Amanda listened to me talk about what had happened without judgment or pity. "You've become so much stronger, Anna," she said, her eyes full of encouragement. Since that day I gradually reconnected with my old friends. I attended gatherings and joined group exercise sessions every Sunday morning. I felt like I was truly living as myself without having to pretend or hide my emotions. Along with renovating my home and rebuilding my social life, I also returned to work. I had been a graphic designer, but because of Ryan, I had put my career on hold to focus on our family. Now I set up a small home office and started taking on freelance projects. The feeling of working again, of being creative and contributing, made me feel like I had rediscovered my life's purpose. Every morning I sat at my desk, soft sunlight streaming through the window, my laptop open with unfinished designs. New clients began reaching out, small contracts that brought me confidence and joy. Gradually my bank account started to grow. Not significantly, but enough for me to feel like I was heading in the right direction. I realized that life didn't have to be perfect. The cracks in my past didn't make me weaker, instead they were marks that helped me become stronger and more mature. My new home with its bright colors, my passionate work, and my genuine friends helped me find myself again. Now when I look in the mirror, I see a different woman, not the wife who always tried to please her husband, but a confident Anna who knew how to love herself and was ready to embrace all the good things life had to offer. I sat in the wicker chair on the balcony, holding a hot cup of tea, the steam carrying the gentle scent of jasmine. The suburban morning was so peaceful, with birds chirping and leaves rustling in the light breeze. The fresh air swept through every nook, blowing away the remaining worries in my heart. For the first time in months, I truly felt a sense of relief. Since the day Ryan left this house, everything gradually returned to the path I had once dreamed of. The police and financial investigators quickly took action after I provided all the evidence of his financial misconduct. Calls from the bank, the car dealership, and the authorities became a regular occurrence for him. But now, I no longer had to worry or think about them. Each investigation update I received, I simply read and then deleted, as if erasing a page of an unworthy past. The day Ryan was summoned to court, I didn't appear. Instead, I chose to spend that morning strolling through the park, admiring the newly bloomed flowers and enjoying the fresh air. Amanda texted to check in and I simply replied, "Everything is fine." I didn't need to see Ryan face the consequences to feel satisfied. The fact that he was being investigated, had lost his job, and might face criminal charges was enough for me to feel that justice had been served. That afternoon I sat down at my desk, opened an old notebook and began writing down my plans for the future. I had spent too much time living in the past. Now it was time to focus on myself. On the first page of the notebook I wrote in bold letters, "Things I want to do." Then, ideas flowed freely from my pen. Travel to Italy and see Venice on a gondola. Take a cooking class and learn how to make exciting dishes from around the world. Open a small shop selling handmade crafts, where I could create charming decorative items and bring joy to others. I started researching travel options, creating itineraries and budgeting. I booked a flight to Italy in the fall, the perfect time to visit Venice with its pleasant weather and dreamy scenery. The thought of exploring freely, no longer bound by anyone or anything, filled me with excitement. Alongside planning my trip, I also began preparing for my business venture. I had always loved crafting, from handmade bracelets to small, beautiful paintings. Now I had the opportunity to turn my passion into a real job. I enrolled in a short course on product design, learning about marketing and online sales. In the evenings, I sat at my desk, meticulously creating each item. Each completed product felt like adding a new brick to the foundation of my life. Amanda stopped by one weekend afternoon, bringing a few sweet pastries and her radiant smile. "I heard you're going on a trip," she asked, her voice full of enthusiasm. "Yes, I've already booked the tickets," I nodded. "I'll visit Venice first, then maybe stop by Florence and Rome if I have time." "That's wonderful. You're finally getting to fulfill your dream." Amanda sat beside me, her eyes shining with pride. "Yes, I've waited so long for this day," I exhaled softly. "Everything feels like a dream." That evening, after Amanda left, I sat in the wicker chair gazing at the starry night sky. There was no more heaviness, no more long nights tossing and turning over the past. I had walked through the darkest path, and now, before me, lay a new road filled with light. I knew the journey ahead would still have challenges, but I was no longer afraid. Every step I took was part of my journey to rediscover myself, and I would embrace each moment with pure joy and gratitude. My story is not just about betrayal or loss but a journey of finding myself again. From pain and disappointment, I learned how to let go of the past, rebuild my life, and put myself first. I realized that sometimes loss is an opportunity for rebirth, to open a new chapter filled with hope and freedom. The most important thing is never to let pain hold you back, but to turn it into motivation to become stronger and happier. What do you think about the character's journey of self-discovery in this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit follow on the channel so you won't miss out on more meaningful and authentic stories about family life in our upcoming videos.